In the early years of my practice, I was definitely the doctor who was looking for the exact right medication to start you on. But then the more I practiced, the more I learned, the more I started realizing diet's really important for overall health, which I did not believe early in my career. I started realizing that, maybe a lot of the symptoms that people are having are actually side effects from the drugs that they're taking. When I first started recommending a low carb or a ketogenic diet, it was 100% a weight loss hack. I had no idea the depths to which it would affect human physiology. The more I practiced, the more I quickly came to realize that there's way more to human health than just take a pill for it.
Essentially, you're saying there's a therapeutic modality to this diet. So I'm going to give you a drug to see how it works for you for 3 months. Why don't I see about the proper human diet is a reset for 3 months also.
Exactly.
Welcome, everyone. Today, I have the honor of sitting down with Dr. Ken Berry, a family physician, best-selling author, and outspoken advocate for rethinking the way we approach nutrition and healthcare. He's helped millions of people through his books, videos, lectures, and over 20 years of medical practice. He's best known for championing what he calls the proper human diet. And today, we'll explore what that means, why it matters, and how it can transform your health. Dr. Berry, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you.
It's always a pleasure to hang out with you, Doctor.
Well, you and I have been doing this for a long time, and I know you were in standard medicine for 20 years or more. What was the reason that you found the transition from standard brick and mortar medicine to online, essentially, but also advocating for a completely different way of thinking about our health and wellness?
So there were several epiphanies along that road. The first one was that I myself became morbidly obese and pre-diabetic. And I'm from a common sense part of the country where you don't take your car to a mechanic whose car will not start. And so in like respect, you don't go get nutrition and health advice from a fat diabetic doctor. That just doesn't make good sense to common sense people. And so that was one of the epiphanies that did the American Diabetes Association diet, and it didn't help me at all. And so then I'm like, well, wait a minute, maybe I don't know anything about nutrition, and maybe they don't either. So I started to look into that. And so that was the beginning of years of me going down various different tributaries of nutrition, of medicine, of medical history, of just history, archaeology, anthropology, et cetera, to try to figure out and piece together what is a proper human diet. And then my wife, Nisha, actually is the one who one day I came home from the clinic and she said, honey, how many people did you see today and help? And I said, I don't know, 30, something like that. And she said, that's so good. I'm proud of you. What if you could have helped 30,000 people today? Wow. And she had been yelling at me for a while to start a YouTube channel. And I thought that was beneath me. I'm a board certified doctor, what are you talking about? Start a YouTube channel. And so when she put it like that, I'm like, well, now, dude, you kind of took an oath to do no harm and to help as many people as possible. Maybe she's right about that. So I started a YouTube channel and I would just make a video about one particular topic and I would make it just like I was talking to a patient in the clinic, right? And so you asked me about gout. Let me just tell you about gout. And so I would make that video and put it up. And they started taking off and the channel did very well and still does very well. And using Nisha's idea, sitting on our back porch after work one day, I've been able to reach out and improve the health of a lot of people. And so I'm always thankful to Nisha for that. I now do remote consults. We have a private community where we have several thousand people who can ask me questions several times a week. So that, and in many cases, they find, I don't really need a doctor that I go to once a month, or I don't really need all this medication. I don't really need all that stuff. All I need is somebody who I trust, who I can ask questions when I have them. And so I think you found this as well in your community, that in many cases, people just have one question, which a knowledgeable doctor can answer very quickly and very completely. And then they're like, oh, okay, now I completely understand that. I have no need to go sit in a waiting room for an hour and a half and then go to the exam room and wait another hour and pay a $35 copay, and then my insurance not cover it and have to file an appeal. I don't have to do any of that. I just had one question that I needed to have answered. And so I love the online way of doing this. I think it's the next level of practicing medicine. And you know as well as I do that many doctors are like, hey, this looks like this is really powerful. I think I'm going to start doing this as well. And I encourage you, every doctor and healthcare provider, you need to have an online presence and just give away what you know. You don't have to charge a copay every time you answer a question.
It seems to me that you've been changing the way medicine is practiced, but it's also how we learn it. And I think when I went to medical school, we didn't have access through these devices we have today. You're not far behind me.
Right.
And yet today, everyone has access. What has been your mission? Because I know you have you have online classes teaching people to take control of their health care. That seems to me it's a little counter to what standard medicine, because you need to go to your doctor. But between lies my doctor told me, common sense labs, and what you're teaching and empowering people, that they should know everything about medical health care. Tell me a little bit about your insights, your passion, and how you've seen regular people from anywhere in this world be more knowledgeable than most doctors, it seems.
That's one of my main missions is to basically remove the padlock from the door of medical and nutrition knowledge. It's been gate kept for generations. And I don't think that's an ethical and moral way for it to be. I don't think that knowledge, that literal knowledge that will improve people's health, why should that be locked behind a copay or a paywall? I don't think that's ethical or moral. And so what I try to teach people is that no, regardless of what your profession is, you can be a truck driver or a grocery sacker, or you can be unemployed. It literally doesn't matter. If you are an adult human being and you've been able to do any kind of profession in your life, if I explain to you simply enough the principles of diet, of nutrition, even of some medical topics, you are capable of going, oh, okay. And I think that's what many people are lacking. And indeed, I think you'd agree, many doctors are lacking this paradigmatic framework, like this medicine based on what they were taught in medical school or based on what the algorithm says to do. If this, then that. There's no thoughts. There's no circumspection. There's no lost in thought reasoning. I wonder why. No, I think many doctors never ask why their entire career. They just look at the algorithm. That's what it says do. That's what they do. The end. That's what you get. And you don't throw a fit. And I think that's inappropriate. And I think that one of the many beautiful things about social media is it has allowed us to break the lock off of the silos of knowledge of nutrition and medicine. And we can just tell people, we can explain it to them, the principles, the concepts of nutrition. And for the average person, once they understand a few basic concepts, they're like, oh, okay, I get it. Because what they're going to have to do going forward, Dr. Kiltz, is they're going to have to make daily decisions, right? And I'm not always going to be there with them. They're not always going to be able to pay a copay and go ask their doctor a question. They need foundational principles so that when they go to a family reunion and they're faced with this smorgasbord of food choices, they need a framework so they can go, okay, I need to eat low carb. I need to eat nutrient dense. I need to eat uninflammatory. I need to eat ancestrally appropriately. What are the things on this table that meet that criteria? Does that make sense? And so once they have those basic concepts, it's really hard to trick them. And so when Kellogg's comes out with this new cereal that's fortified with 27 vitamins and minerals, that's whole grain, and that's, this, that, and the other non-GMO, they're going to be like, no, that's not anything a human would have eaten 15, 20, 25, 30,000 years ago. I'm not going to eat that unless I'm starving to death. Then I'll obviously eat whatever I can to keep from starving. But if what I'm trying to do is optimize my health, which I think is what most people these days are trying to do, you would know immediately that doesn't meet any of the criteria of a proper human diet. I'm not going to inflame my body by eating that junk.
How did you come up with this idea of the proper human diet? And what would you say fits into that basket?
So my undergraduate degree was in animal biology. And so I studied the comparative anatomy and physiology of multiple different animals. And mammalogy was kind of my favorite part, studying the different mammals. And then in particular, the primates, right? And so it occurred to me very early on in even my undergraduate career that there is a proper cow diet. There's a proper bovine diet. We know what that is. When I go to speaking events, I'll very often find the youngest child in the room, Dr. Kiltz, and I'll point them out and say, "What's your name?" "Okay, Jody, what does a cow eat?" And you know what? I have not found a child so young yet in any of these events that the child doesn't go, "Grass?" And I'm like, "Yes, Jody, that is correct." Even a 5-year-old knows what cows should eat. And and so I use that as an instructional kind of tidbit. If we know what a cow should eat, well, what about a wolf, little Jody? What should a wolf eat? Deer? Yes, meat. That's correct. That's what they should eat. You're right. But when I ask little Jody that question, or indeed if I ask Jody's mom or dad that question about humans, what should a human eat? You're going to get 1,000 different answers. And I'm always saying that humans are the most intelligent idiots on planet Earth because we can run the planet, but we have no idea what we should eat as a species. And so I used my training in medicine, my very minor formal education in nutrition, which wasn't much, but then I've had years of armchair nutrition in nutrition in the decade since. But both of those disciplines kept pushing me towards history because we know that a cow has eaten grass for millions of years, right? It's self-evident. You don't have to argue about that. We don't need a study to prove what the proper cow diet is, do we? We just know. And so it kept pushing me to history and then to archaeology, then to anthropology, then to paleoanthropology, saying, because it occurred to me, we know what cows should eat because we've watched them eat for thousands of years. I'll bet you if we looked at human history, there's a lot of record of what we ate 500 years ago, 1,000, even 10,000 years ago. And indeed there is, because if you ask the question in anthropological circles or paleoanthropological circles, people with PhDs in paleoanthropology, what should a human eat? Their answer is invariably, well, lots of meat and then whatever plants happen to be ripe at that time of the year. That's what humans have always eaten since well before recorded history. And then with the stable isotope analysis, we can tell 100,000, 200,000, 300,000 years back, that's what our ancestors basically ate, was as much meat as they could get their hands on. If they lived near a river or an ocean, then it was the kind of meat that swims. If they lived on a savanna or a plain, then it was the kind of meat that runs, creeps, crawls, jumps, slithers, or flies. But invariably, they ate as much meat as they could get their hands on. And so that's from all those different disciplines is where I basically assembled the principles of a proper human diet.
All right. If you're not a member of the Mighty Tribe yet, you must, right? Just go to Kiltz's Mighty Tribe and become a member. It's free. The whole intention is to bring the community of all humans to learn why this is better than this. And we invite all vegans and vegetarians, Mediterraneans, and carnivorians to Kiltz's Mighty Tribe. It's a meetup. It's a place to learn while you've been suffering likely from this and you'll feel better on this. But what are the nuances of what you can do to feel better, look better, and live better? Because I've done it. And that's why I created the Mighty Tribe, to bring you into the masterclass. Be the master, my friends, and join Kiltz's Mighty Tribe. God bless. Why are we getting so sick? And I imagine in your years in standard practice, you rarely took someone off of their medications. Maybe you can sort of give us your insights into what is causing our problems and how have you seen the change in how you practice and how we can all sort of move towards that way of living.
Yeah, in the early years of my practice, I was definitely the doctor who was looking for the exact right medication to start you on. And I was one of those young doctors that took great pride in knowing all of the latest FDA approved medications and the latest FDA approvals for specific medications. That was kind of my forte. So I would be the guy that would start you on the very new drug that you would still have to go through the prior approval process, and my nurse would have to sit on the phone for an hour to get the drug approved. I was that guy. And then it quickly dawned on me, because that was also at the time in medical history where increasingly there were more and more generic drugs, right? A lot of the very popular drugs were going off patent, so they were becoming generic. And I had a very poor patient population, right? Lower middle class, and then some people were way below the poverty line. And so I quickly changed gears and I said, no, I'm going to be the guy that if there's a generic option that works, I'm going to do that and try to save my patients as much money as I can while still giving them state-of-the-art medical care, right? Deprescribing a medication from someone other than the narcotics and the benzos and habit-forming drugs like that, Soma, because we had a lot of problem with that in my area of the country. When I first started practicing, we had 4 or 5 doctors that was literally, they prescribed 4 drugs. It was Lortab, Percocet, Valium, Xanax, and Soma. That's what everybody got, and they got a month's supply and 5 refills every time they went to the doctor. So that was really the only deprescribing I did early in my career. But then the more I practiced, the more I learned, the more I read, the more I started realizing diet's really important for overall health, which I did not believe early in my career. I started realizing that, maybe a lot of the symptoms that people are having are actually side effects from the drugs that they're taking. Even if somebody's just taking one drug, there can be 20 or 30 different side effects that quite commonly occur with that drug. But if they're taking 2 drugs, you don't just double the side effects. It's actually synergistic. You multiply the side effects. And every time you add a 3rd drug, a 4th drug, a 5th drug, it's not additive, it's multiplicative. And so very quickly, somebody taking 3, 4, or 5 drugs, they could be suffering from literally 100 side effects to different degrees. And so that's when it increasingly got on my radar. I probably need to be deprescribing any unnecessary drugs, any drugs they've been on for too long, any drugs that they don't think are helping them. And so very early in my career, deprescribing became very prominent on my radar. But as well as I do that there are many doctors out there in active practice right now who never deprescribe a drug. They only add a drug.
On your website, which is phenomenal, I recommend everyone to go to Dr. Ken Berry, and there's a great guidebook to the proper human diet. What inspired you to put that together? And I got it for free. What are you doing?
I know. I've had so many people say, dude, why do you give everything away, including my wife? Because, she likes to be able to pay the bills. And I just, like I said earlier, I don't feel like that knowledge that will improve somebody's health ought to be padlocked behind a paywall. I just don't think that's moral. And so I do have products I charge for if people need extra stuff. But the vast majority of just the knowledge, the information, the wisdom, I try to give that away. And so the Proper Human Diet Guidebook, if anybody wants me to email them a copy, all they have to do is put in their email address and I'll email them a free copy. And so it basically contains a very simplified version of all of the principles of a proper human diet. And I think that anybody of any level of education, once they've gotten a copy of that guidebook and read through it a couple of times, they will immediately be able to go to a fast food restaurant, a supermarket, a family reunion, a church buffet, whatever, and make good food decisions. Each decision is going to improve their health or it's going to worsen their health. So why not teach them how to improve their health with each food decision?
Community and the community you developed and others have developed seems to be such an important part of this journey. Can you tell us a little bit about how important that has been? I know so many people have found so much health and wellness in the community. And can you speak about that?
Yeah. So there are some people out there who are like you and me. Dr. Kiltz. They're mountain lions. You tell us one time what to do, and we're like, okay, got it. We go back to our mountaintop and we just apply it and we do it. We don't need any help. We don't need any support. But not everyone's like that. Some people need support. They need help. They need a tribe. They need a family. And for many, many people out there, their spouse is completely unhelpful. In fact, it seems to them like their spouse is trying to trip them up, and or their mother-in-law or their parents or their aunt or uncle or their next door neighbor, their best friend. They're like, hey, I'm trying to lose some weight. I'm trying to reverse type 2 diabetes. I'm trying to get rid of my fatty liver or whatever the malady is. And here comes their spouse. I just made some chocolate chip cookies. And you're like, you're not helping me. What are you doing? And so I think many people are stuck in a family or friendship situation like that, where their roommate seems like actively trying to trip them up and get them to drink a Coke and have some Cheetos, and they don't want to do that anymore. And so I think for so many people, it's super valuable to have a tribe of people who, even if it's virtually, you can log on and say, hey, my husband won't stop bringing home the Pepsi Cola. How do you guys handle that? And then all of a sudden, here's a tribe of people from all over the world who are like, hey, this is how I handled that. This is what I did. Here's my tip or my trick. And I think for so many people, that's the difference between success and failure, is having those people who've got your back, even if they're in a different time zone or on a different continent. These people have got your back. They understand the journey that you're on. They understand the trials and tribulations that you're having to go through, and they're willing to step up and help you.
Would you say that from your past practice experience, the infinite number of people that are showing up that have healed the diseases that you could never imagine that in your standard practice?
100%. When I first started recommending a low carb or a ketogenic diet many years ago, it was 100% a weight loss hack. I had no idea the depths to which it would affect human physiology. I had no idea what it would do to the human mitochondria, right? Or the ribosomes, or the lysosomes, or the nucleus. I just didn't have any idea. I had learned molecular biology in medical school, but I'd probably forgot it, right? And so I really thought that humans were kind of magical creatures. You could eat whatever. It didn't really matter. If you got sick enough, there's a pill for that. I would prescribe that and it'd be fine, whatever. But the more I practiced, the more I quickly came to realize that there's way more to human health than just take a pill for it. And so what I would notice when I basically would start to say, hey, eat a meat-heavy ketogenic diet because you're morbidly obese, I would have people come back in 3 or 6 months for a checkup. And keep in mind, at the same time, I was telling people to join Weight Watchers, join the gym, eat the American Diabetes Association diet, right? But invariably, when somebody would come back for their 3 or 6 month checkup, that I had recommended the ADA diet, there would be no signal of progress. They maybe lost a pound or two, or maybe gained a pound or two. You can never tell. Their A1C may have come down a bit or went up a bit. There's really no pattern. But when I recommended a meat-heavy ketogenic diet, without exception, they lost weight, substantial amounts of weight. And their A1C had come down not just 1 or 2 tenths of a point, but 1 or 2 points, which was unheard of, even prescribing medication for people. You don't see somebody's A1C come down 2.5 points in 3 or 6 months. That just doesn't happen, even with 2 or 3 medications, right? And so that's when I was like, and then I would see people with severe shoulder arthritis or severe thumb arthritis. And they would come back after 3 months of this meat-heavy keto diet, and they'd be like, Doc, my shoulder doesn't hurt at all. Now, if this was a knee joint or a hip joint, you could make the argument, well, they've lost a bunch of weight. It's less mechanical strain on the joint, right? Well, yes, but this is not a weight-bearing joint, right? So there's no reason that this joint should be better after 6 months of a meat-heavy diet that's very low in carbohydrates. That doesn't make any sense. There has to be something going on at the molecular and the cellular level. People's heartburn goes away. People's psoriasis got much better. People's dandruff went away. People's IBS went completely away. All kinds of things that should not be improved by diet, right? Because we weren't taught that in medical school. We weren't taught that a specific diet would treat a specific condition. And so that the more I would see those people come back in, the first time I saw it, I thought, well, that's an anecdote. That doesn't mean anything. But you know as well as a story verbatim, before you start going, maybe there's something going on here that we should look into. And so then I also noticed the pattern that the lower carbohydrate diet that I recommended, which is by definition going to be a more meat heavy diet, right? And less vegetables, the more aggressive the healing was. The quicker the inflammation went down, the faster the healing happened. And so that's why I kind of was led almost subconsciously to carnivore.
So the basic differences between paleo, keto, and carnivore, could you just give us a quick little synopsis on that?
Yeah. So I first started recommending primal, paleo, low carb. And so those are lower carbohydrate diet options. Anytime you lower the carbohydrates of a diet enough, you're going to have to get rid of all the wheat, rice, oats, corn, ultra processed, sugar added, because those are just carb coma, right? So by lowering the carbohydrate count, you're going to have to get rid of all the junk. That's really the first thing to go. And also in the process of that, you get rid of the vast majority of the vegetable seed oils as well, don't you? And so then when you go from low carb to keto, you're cutting the carbohydrates even more. And that's going to lead to more healing. That's going to lead to more fat loss and a lowering of the A1C, a lowering of the fasting insulin. And then when you go from keto to ketovore, which is very, very, very low carbohydrate, you have to eat more meat in order to eat the amount of food that you need for nutrition. And then, of course, if you turn down the carbohydrate intake knob as low as you possibly can, that's carnivore. Beef, butter, bacon, and eggs, plus or minus seafood if you like it and you want it.
You've written a number of books through the years, and the first one I recognize is Lies, My Doctor Told Me, and then another one with Zane Griggs.
Kicking ass after 50.
Yeah, be dangerous. Keep being dangerous. Tell a little bit about the lies and how important that was. And now how you're giving people information on how they can evaluate their own labs.
Yeah. So Common Sense Labs is now in its second edition. It's been picked up by an official publisher, and there's 4 times as much information in this second edition as there was in the first edition, and also way fewer typos. And so basically, everything that we talk about in Common Sense Labs is understandable by anybody with a 9th grade level education. We really try to use common sense language, plain language, so that anybody can understand this, regardless of what your profession is. And the odd thing about this is many of the lab tests we talk about, once we explain why this test is so important in 1 or 2 short paragraphs, when that person goes to their doctor and says, for example, hey, would you mind ordering a fasting insulin for me because I want to see if my insulin level's high or not, the patient actually winds up understanding the insulin test and more completely than their doctor, because many doctors never check an insulin level. They have no idea why you check it. They have no idea why it's so very, very important. If you suffer from any metabolic disease, that you need to know what your insulin level is. And so I love it when I get a story back in our private community. Hey, I went to the doctor and asked for a fasting insulin, and the doctor looked at me funny and said, don't even know what that is or why you would want that. And they pull out Common Sense Labs and they say, well, right here on page 21, it says that a fasting insulin tells you the following things and that it helps you with the following conditions. And also, if you're afraid my insurance won't cover it, here are the ICD-10 codes that you can put on the billing form so that the insurance can pay for it. And many doctors are at first offended by that because they don't like it when patients know more than they do. But then most doctors catch on very quickly and they're appreciative. And then they're like, oh, well, okay, let me look into this insulin test. Because what winds up happening then is that they start to order an insulin test on all of their patients, and they find hundreds of their patients really hyperinsulinemic, which is very serious and very concerning. But they had no idea because they didn't even know the power of checking an insulin level.
What can all of us do, not just the doctors, but all of our community, do to help make changes to the healthcare system that we take the control of the message in our health and wellness for our families?
I think the first step is treating your doctor like a learned health partner. Your doctor is not your daddy. Your doctor is not your boss. You are not under arrest. You're not in custody. You do not have to blindly do anything your doctor tells you to do. Your doctor is your learned health partner. You counsel with them, you take advice from them, but ultimately the decision is yours. That's number one. Number two is being afraid to have a conversation with your doctor. Now, a conversation implies a two-sided interaction. Most doctors are in a hurry, and I understand that. And I'm sorry, doctors, in advance for the educated, empowered patients that I'm sending to you. But the patients that I've interacted with are informed and they're aware, and they're going to ask you questions. And you better not be offended by an interested, motivated patient who has questions about their health and about your plan for their health care. That's a good thing. And more doctors are starting to pick up on that. It's actually a good thing to have a motivated patient, somebody who's interested, who's engaged. That's a good thing. That's not a bad thing. And so I think that once I give people the permission to, hey, take a list of the 3 most important questions to your doctor and don't let them leave the exam room until they've answered your questions and they've answered the follow-up question that you have, because they're your health advisor. Their job is to advise you. They're not your drug dealer. Their job is not just to write a prescription and get the hell out of the room as quickly as they can. Their job is to advise you. And in order for that to happen, you have to have a conversation. And in order for that to happen, you have to ask questions, and they have to rationally, intelligently answer your questions, and then any follow-up questions that you have. And I think just that level of dialogue between a patient and a doctor, it retrains doctors to, hey, you need to slow down. This is that person's one and only life. For you, you've got thousands of patients. If one dies every now and then, as long as they don't sue you, oh, well, tough luck. But this is that patient's one life, and you better treat that patient like it when you're looking early and truthfully.
Our job is through the communities and the education we're all building online is helping give everyone the power to understand their healthcare. And with the tools like Common Sense Labs, Lies My Doctor Told Me, and also your book on the proper human diet, people can begin to have some strength and power in making those decisions. I mean, healthcare debt is still the largest cause of bankruptcy in America. And
Yep.
what we're simply doing in the investment into these courses and into online communities is really nominal to the investment in your health and wellness in your family. Would you say?
100%, because you can get a month-long subscription for our private community for less than the price of one copay. So people pay anywhere from $15 to $35 for a copay to go see their doctor, and they get about 5 to 8 minutes with their doctor. For less than the price of one copay, you can be in our community for a month, and you get 4 hours of live Q&A with me each and every week. And then every now and then, Nisha will pop in. We'll have guest doctors and dietitians pop in. I think you've been a guest inside of our community before. We have Dr. Diamond, we have Dr. Westman, we have Dr. Hampton, all these people jumping in and doing Q&As. And then we have 10 certified health coaches in there as well, who are also constantly answering questions. And so, I mean, I feel like it's quite the bargain. And I've had many people say, dude, you're not charging enough for that. You need to charge more. But as we've already established, I'm not here to make $1 million. I'm here to improve the health of 1 million people.
And it's probably the cost of a few Starbucks coffees, every week. And I'm wondering if our health savings account money, because this seems to me that this is the real health and wellness, not only potentially, going to a gym, but I think this is much more important investment for anyone's health and wellness.
I totally agree. And the current administration in Washington is trying to make some changes to the law and regulation so that people can use their health savings account for health coaches and for groups like this. And that's one thing I also wanted to talk about with you today is the potential billion-dollar industry in health coaching. I think that health coaching is the next step in healthcare. No doctor has time to sit down and talk to each and every patient about every single principle of a proper human diet, right? But I think as more and more doctors learn about how important diet is, they're going to feel like, gosh, I need to tell everybody about this, but I don't have time. Well, that's where a certified health coach comes in. So not only can a certified health coach have their own online presence and they can take clients one-on-one, but they can also partner with a doctor who's alert and aware and say, hey, doc, I'll do a once a month or a once a week class with 10, 20, 30 of your patients who have obesity, who have type 2 diabetes, fatty liver, hypertension, metabolic syndrome. I will help you teach them the principles of a proper human diet. And that way you can continue to spend 7 to 10 minutes with each patient, and you just give them my card as your sponsored health coach. And then I'll teach them about diet. I'll talk to them about becoming slowly but surely more active, getting faster, getting stronger. And so I think that over the next 5 to 10 years, there's going to be this huge market for health coaches who are certified by reputable organization that doctors know and trust. And I think that's going to be a new class of jobs for people that it's going to be so rewarding. Can you imagine you were an insurance salesman, right? You made good money, but it wasn't very fulfilling. But now you're a certified health coach and you're literally saving people's lives on a daily basis. You're saving their toes from being amputated, saving their eyes from blindness, saving their heart from a heart attack and their brain from a stroke. That's now your new career. How sexy is that? And how rewarding would that be for people who are good at, they're a talker, they're a car salesman, they're an insurance salesman. They can talk to people and they can get people to understand them. But their previous job, they weren't saving lives. They were just making a little money. But now you can have a job literally transforming the health of the people right in front of you. And I think that's the next big step in healthcare, is that every doctor who's worth a damn is going to have a certified health coach that they work side by side with, who has small group sessions, one-on-one sessions, big group sessions, because that way the doctor can still just do what they're good at. And then their health coach can teach people the principles of a proper human diet.
I mean, you must have seen a huge growth, exponential, in the number of people that are beginning to follow this line of learning about nutrition and health and wellness that has expanded so much. I mean, from probably hundreds to thousands to potentially millions of people, not just carnivore, not just keto, but proper human diet ideas.
Yep. And so initially, my entire goal was to reach out to just people, one person at a time, whenever they were ready to hear it. That YouTube video is evergreen. It's sitting there waiting on you. When you have that chest pain, have to go to the ER, and now you're really aware, like, oh crap, I'm unhealthy. I need to get with it. At 3 a.m. when you get home from the emergency department, you can start watching my YouTube videos. They're always there. But what I've seen that is so encouraging to me is that increasingly I'm having medical students, medical residents from all specialties, and also young doctors who are already out in practice reach out to me through an intermediary and say things like, my mom used to weigh 300 pounds and had type 2 diabetes. She found you on YouTube, and now she is healthy and fit, and she's running half marathons routinely. She's also divorced my dad because he was a piece of crap, and now she's got this new boyfriend, and she's just living life. I've never seen my mom so happy and so active and so healthy. I'm going to teach my patients, when I get finished with my training, I'm going to teach my patients about a proper human diet as well. I've had students in dietetics and nutrition. I've had student physical therapy, just student pharmacists. All these students and all these resident physicians are like, they've seen their uncle get better, or their mom, or their dad, or their best friend or next door neighbor. And they're like, dude, this is powerful. Why wouldn't I incorporate this into my practice? And so I have to be very diplomatic with what I tell them. I have to tell them, while you're in medical school in residency, You're not going to talk about this, right? You don't talk about Fight Club when you're in med school or residency. You're going to regurgitate to them what you need to regurgitate in order to pass the test, to pass your rotation, to pass step 1, 2, and 3 of the boards. When you're done with that, when you're a grown doctor, as we say, that's when you start teaching every single patient you see about the power of a proper human diet. And you should see their eyes light up, Dr. Kiltz. They're like, oh, I see what you're saying. So keep it on the down low because I'll get in trouble in medical school. Yes, you will, because most medical school is funded by big pharma. Most schools of dietetics are funded by big food. So they're not going to want to hear you talk about beef, butter, bacon, and eggs. They want to hear you talk about eating the rainbow, eating all things in moderation, and then also taking lots of prescription drugs. That's what you need to talk about in medical school and in your nutrition classes. But when you're out, when you've got that diploma, that's when you start teaching every human you interact with about the power of a proper human diet.
The triple BE, beef, bacon, butter, and eggs, is a foundation that you share. It's so narrow in some ways, it seems, but do we need vegetables? And are there some vegetables that are more okay than others?
Yeah. So the first question, do we need vegetables? This is a very complicated question, and I'm going to give you a very complex answer. Are you ready? No. That's the answer. Okay. Now, if there are some vegetables that you enjoy, some that you like, some that you miss, I think it's fine for many people to incorporate those vegetables into their diet if they're well cooked or well soaked or well sprouted or well roasted or well fermented. Because the reason that our ancestors did all those things to plants was to make them less inflammatory. Now, I think there are some people with autoimmune conditions and severe inflammatory conditions who should probably never eat any plants whatsoever. There are some people who just are overweight or obese, or they have type 2 diabetes. For many of those people, if they'll just cut the total carbohydrate content somewhere down to somewhere between 50 and 100 total grams a day, they'll completely reverse their type 2 diabetes back to a normal A1C. They'll completely get rid of their fatty liver. Their blood pressure will come back down to normal. They will get rid of their severe obesity, and they'll just be overweight at that point. And for many people, Robert, that's perfect. They're happy. That's it. That's goals for them. They have no interest in going to the next level. But some of us, right, we have higher aspirations. We want to get back to our high school weight, or we want to get back to having no inflammation whatsoever. We want to get back to having a very narrow waist so that our waist to height ratio is less than 0.5. For many people, in order to do that, you've got to cut the carbohydrate intake to down to 20 total grams, or even 10 total grams, or even as close to 0 grams of total carbohydrate a day as you possibly can. And a lot of people don't get this, but carnivore is keto. And basically, if you're eating keto and you keep cutting the carbs, by definition, you will arrive ultimately at a carnivore diet because it is the lowest carbohydrate option. And so for many people, it's just the carbohydrates. That's the main enemy for them, right? But for other people, it's the oxalates or the lectins or the phytates or the saponins or the phytoestrogens or some other anti-nutrient phytochemical in the plants that's either leading to inflammation in their gut or in their skin or in their joints. It's messing with their fertility, which is your specialty, or it's messing with their mental health, which is a huge deal as well. And so that's there's research on the books right now of a ketogenic diet completely reversing even schizophrenia, not to mention depression, anxiety, OCD, and other kind of more run-of-the-mill mental health conditions, but even severe things like schizophrenia, right? And then when you go to higher fat carnivore, the mental health benefits are just off the scale. It's really, it feels miraculous to many people, but you and I both know it's not miraculous. It's just physiology and biochemistry. That's what it is. But if you don't understand all the biochemical pathways, it sure looks like a miracle when you were on 5 psychiatric medications and still not doing well. And then after 6 to 12 months of beef, butter, bacon, and eggs, probably with a little higher fat than most people would recommend, you're off all those psychiatric meds and your mental health is better than it's been in decades. How many times have you heard that story? Because I've heard it thousands of times.
Infinite, infinite. You've probably heard also about, am I getting enough nutrients and minerals and vitamins on the carnivore keto diets?
Yep.
Do I need to eat more frequently? Can you maybe talk a little bit about those things, including fasting and maybe throw in a little exercise?
Yeah. So most diet experts, if you gave them a multiple choice question and said, what is more nutrient dense? What has more vitamins and minerals? Is it A, blueberries, C, kale, B, spinach, or D, just regular ground beef from the supermarket with an ounce of beef liver ground up in that cheap ground beef? Which one has more vitamins and minerals and fatty acids and amino acids that your body needs? 90% of people are going to pick the blueberries or the kale or the spinach because they've been mistrained. They've been misled. This diet is the healthiest, is the nutrient dense. That's just not true. That's demonstrably false. You can look this up on any food database and quickly you'll realize, oh no, beef that includes the fat and includes an ounce or two of liver ground up into it where you can't taste it, that is a literal superfood, multivitamin, multimineral. And so many people with obesity, they're not eating too many calories. They're just eating too much total food. They're eating too many molecules, too many atoms, because that's what the bathroom scale weighs, is atoms and molecules. It doesn't weigh energy, right? And calories are a unit of measuring energy. But your fat ass, when you get on the bathroom scale, and I can say that because I used to have a fat ass, it's measuring mass. It's measuring atoms and molecules. And if you're just eating too much total food, you're going to wind up weighing too much total weight, having too much stored fat. But it all comes down to what the food does to your hormone levels. There are hormones that tell our body that we're hungry, and there are hormones that tell our body that we're full. And when you're eating a diet of beef, butter, bacon, and eggs, which for many people sounds boring initially, it's like, won't I get bored with that? But you know as well as I do that there's a million carnivores in the world right now eating a carnivore diet, and they never get bored. They're always happy when there's beef on the plate or fish or eggs or whatever. They're always happy, and it's always a delicious meal. But a lot of people have been trained, you've got to eat the rainbow. You've got to eat a wide variety of foods in order to get all the nutrition. But the truth of the matter is you can eat a very narrow range of foods if those foods are very nutrient dense and get every vitamin and mineral that your body needs. And so then the question arises, well, what about the inflammation? Well, is red meat inflammatory? Is bacon inflammatory? No, actually, you've been, again, mistaught. Meat is the most uninflammatory food that a human being can eat. The most inflammatory is some concoction made up of wheat, rice, oats, and corn, plus some added sugar, plus a vegetable seed oil. That can be a breakfast cereal, that can be a tortilla, that can be a slice of bread, that can even be homemade bread, because those are the three ingredients that go into all that ultra processed junk food: is grains, sugar, vegetable seed oil. And so once you realize, oh, that's the most inflammatory food you can eat, meat is actually the least inflammatory food. That helps so many people to understand what a proper human diet is and how their health's going to benefit if they adopt it and stick to it strictly.
So meat has been labeled as a cause of cancer. Your answer is?
That has never been proven. It hasn't even been close to being proven. The World Health Organization, which I suspect most people watching this video believe blindly. Whatever the World Health Organization says, you just follow it blindly, right? No? Okay. Well, the World Health Organization they're the ones who say that meat is a class 2 carcinogen and processed meat is a class 1 carcinogen. I believe very little that the World Health Organization tells me, and I especially don't believe them when it comes to meat causing cancer, because every single research study they used to come to that determination was an epidemiological study that can only show a possible weak association It can never, ever show causation. Yet they put that warning out there like this has been proven. And that's an absolute lie. This has never been proven. And I predict never will be proven because I don't think it's true, not even a little bit.
How do you respond to critics who say saturated fat and cholesterol are dangerous?
Well, this is old school thinking. This comes from the lipid heart hypothesis that has been completely and thoroughly debunked and disproven. The new lean mass hyperresponder research coming out is going to be the final nail in the coffin of eating saturated fat causes heart disease. I think that most young doctors who are still interested in being students, who are still interested in learning new things, keeping up to date with the latest, they already realize that eating saturated fat doesn't cause any disease whatsoever in human beings. Now, the polyunsaturated fatty acids that you get in such high contents in vegetable seed oils, that's probably problematic. That's probably going to cause inflammation in many, many people. But saturated fat that comes from animals that humans have been eating for millennia. Just when you say it like that, Dr. Kiltz, most common sense people go, wait, yeah, that's true. We've been eating fatty animals for thousands of years, but yet that's bad for us? It's almost analogous if a doctor got on Fox News or CNN and said, you should stop drinking water. Water is bad for you. You should only drink Gatorade from now on. Pure water is bad for you. Everybody be like, what the hell? What's wrong with this guy? He just said that water's bad for you. You should drink Gatorade. That makes just as much sense to say, stop eating saturated animal fat that humans have eaten for thousands and thousands of years. Only eat this polyunsaturated fat vegetable seed oil that humans have only been eating for a few decades. That's much safer. Anybody with any common sense is going to immediately have a red flag go up and go, what? That don't make any sense. Next, they'll be telling us that it's dangerous to breathe air.
I'm worried about that. Dr. Berry, what's the most persistent myth about human nutrition that you'd like to see die out?
The calories in, calories out myth. The myth that if you want to lose weight, you have to semi-starve yourself. You have to push away from the table while you're still hungry, and you have to just white knuckle it and semi-starve yourself for months in order to lose down to a healthy body weight and a healthy body fat percentage. If you think of it as an animal biologist like me, every wild mammal on planet Earth, including mammals who are in instances of food abundance. In other words, there's all the foods they love are there as much as they want it. They don't become obese. They put on weight, but they never become obese because their satiety hormones kick on because they're eating a species appropriate diet. Their hunger hormones turn off, their satiety hormones telling them that you're full, you've had enough. Those hormones turn on and you just naturally stop eating. That same exact thing happens when you're eating a proper human diet that's full of fatty meats and eggs with the yolk and fatty cuts of other types of meat, including seafood, as long as you don't bread it or fry it in a vegetable seed oil. You get that same feedback. You're able to eat until you're full, like every other animal on planet Earth, and you can still have a normal, healthy body size and body shape while not actively starving yourself every single day for the rest of your life. That's the myth that I want to die.
And Dr. Berry, why do you think the official dietary guidelines have strayed so far from what you believe humans should eat?
I think a big part of it is that the schools of dietetics and nutrition are literally sponsored by Kellogg's and Kraft Heinz and Mondelez and Pepsi Cola and Coca-Cola. That's who's building the schools of nutrition. That's who's buying all the textbooks. That's who's funding the research that goes into the textbooks. Human nature is what it is, Dr. Kiltz. There is a profit motive for everything everybody does. It might be just a mild profit motive, or they might just want to rob you blind. There's different levels of that, but there's a profit motive in everything that anybody does. They are trying to teach dietitians that you should eat the rainbow. You should eat everything in moderation, which includes Fruit Loops, and you should eat a little bit of jelly donut in moderation. You should drink a little Coca-Cola in moderation, because they want to make a little bit of profit off every time you put food or drink in your mouth. And I'm sick and tired of the big food companies making billions while making everybody sick. And I'm sick and tired of the big pharmaceutical companies making billions by feeding pills and injections and infusions into our people that we love and managing their disease, not reversing it, not curing it, just managing it so that they've got a customer for life. I'm sick of that entire profit model, and I'll never shut up and I'll never rest until every human being on planet Earth understands the principles of a proper human diet. And then if that person's an adult and they say, yeah, Dr. Berry, Dr. Kiltz, I understand, but I'm grown. I'm going to do whatever I want to do. I'm going to eat what I want to eat. Fine. God bless you. Go do it. But you know better. That's my job, is to teach you better. And if you make bad choices after you know better, God bless you. Go live your life. But I want everybody to know the truth so that they at least have the option of the truth should they choose to implement it.
At my 40-year medical school reunion, it's alumni weekend essentially, and the most important thing they're asking all of us is for a donation. The university has more mega buildings going up than I've ever seen before. There was a really great oncology presentation about upper respiratory cancers, and I asked about nutritional science. I talked a little bit about Dr. Seyfried, and the comment was, we have an amazing nutritional department. And ultimately, it had nothing to do with keto, carnivore, or the things that we're talking about. It was really about the standard story of fruit, fiber, vegetable, seeds, nut, 3 to 6 meals a day, little to no meat. A couple of quick questions. I won't go too much longer. Dr. Berry, do you think there's such thing as a one-size-fits-all diet, or does it vary between individuals?
I think there's a spectrum of proper diets, and it matters how old you are. It matters how metabolically sick you are. Your gut microbiome probably figures into that. Your genetic heritage, where your people came from in the world, that all that stuff probably matters. But I think a proper human diet spectrum is somewhere between low carb with real whole one ingredient naturally occurring foods, down to 20 to 50 total grams a day, metabolically sicker, down to a ketovore diet, 10 total grams a day, all the way down to carnivore, or even a lion diet, which is ruminant meat, salt, and water only, if you have severe autoimmune conditions. I think that range, that is the spectrum of a proper human diet. I think the human species is a low carbohydrate species. If you feed us too many carbohydrates, especially ultra processed sugar added carbohydrates, we get sick and fat. This is just, obviously go outside your front door and look around at everybody. And I think you'll see evidence of that. And so I don't think everybody needs to be on the carnivore diet for the rest of their life. But I think some of us need to be on a carnivore diet for the rest of our lives. I think a 90-day carnivore diet, beef, butter, bacon, and eggs reset. If you're unhappy with your current state of inflammation or body fat percentage or A1C or blood pressure or any number of metrics, 90 days of beef, butter, bacon, and eggs. Eat as much as you want, eat as often as you want, eat until you're full. And after that 90 days, I think you're going to go, oh my God, I feel so much better. I look so much better. My brain works so much better. I'm so much more active. I actually want to go outside and exercise now, whereas before I'd rather be punched in the nose as exercise. I think that reset, everybody needs to do a 90-day carnivore beef, butter, bacon, and eggs reset just to know how good they can feel. Then they can make an educated decision. Do I want to add back in plants or not?
Essentially, you're saying there's a therapeutic modality to this diet. So I'm going to give you a drug to see how it works for you for 3 months. Why don't I see about the proper human diet is a reset for 3 months also?
Exactly. And you know as well as I do, very often there's some new pharmaceutical on the market and you're very excited and you prescribe it to 20 or 30 patients and you're like, come back in 3 months and let's see how you're doing. And invariably they come back and they're like, yeah, maybe it helped a little, but not really. But I'm also having these 3 new side effects now A proper human diet is not a new fad. It's not a new chemical. It is the oldest human diet on planet Earth. Why not give that a try for 90 days? Because usually people are very happy about the effects and the side effects. And there's no copay, there's no prior approval, there's no insurance phone calls. You just eat real human food for 90 days.
You answered this, but I want you to answer one more time. Dr. Berry, how does the proper human diet fit into the history of human evolution?
Yeah. If you go back in time far enough, everybody's ancestor ate meat. Okay. If you're a Buddhist, if you're Hindu, if you're of any religious, if you're Seventh-day Adventist, if you go back in time and just follow your grandfathers back through time and your grandmothers, if you get back to about 8,000 or 9,000 years ago, every single one of your ancestors was not a vegan. They did not eat a plant-based diet. That is part of your modern culture. That is not part of your ancient heritage. Your ancient heritage, regardless of your nationality, your creed, your gender, your where you came from in the world, your people ate meat. They ate lots of meat. They ate as much meat as they could get their hands on. There is no such thing as a heritage or a culture that is a vegan or plant-based culture. This is a modern invention. Indeed, it was impossible to live healthily on a plant-based diet before modern refrigerated transport. Okay, a lot of people don't realize this, but you can't get avocados from southern Mexico up to Connecticut without refrigerated transport. It does not happen. You can't. And so in the middle of winter in Connecticut or New Hampshire or Maine, what were you going to eat 1,000 years ago? You were going to eat meat. You were going to hunt. You were going to kill something. You were going to cook it. You were going to eat it. This is the repeated story from every corner of planet Earth, every continent. There is no exception to this. If you go back far enough in history, your family were meat eaters. I'm sorry if that offends you, but it is the truth and it is verifiable.
And Dr. Berry, can this way of eating be sustainable and affordable for the average family?
Yeah. Unfortunately, it is currently sadly true that eating an actual healthy diet, it costs more than eating a junk food. Waste money on something. I would much prefer that you waste your money on good quality food, because having good health is a blessing. It is, you've heard the old saying that a healthy man has many dreams and wishes, but a sick man has only one dream and only one wish, and that's to be well. And so I think once you start to think about that as a common sense adult, you're like, yeah, I guess I could upgrade my cable package or my internet package, but maybe I should just spend a little bit more of my income on real human food, which is fatty cuts of meat, eggs with the yolk, and other cuts of meat, whether it flies, swims, creeps, crawls, jumps, or slithers. Eat your meat, because that's where your best health is going to come from.
Is it enough to just eat supermarket ground beef with or without throwing some liver in there and maybe an egg or two, and you can be healthy and much more affordable than many other cuts of meat?
Absolutely. If somebody's watching this who's of limited means, money's tight. I get it. I used to be broke as a joke. You can do just fine on nothing but the supermarket beef, butter, bacon, and eggs. Okay. And that is going to be relatively inexpensive. You can find it on sale. You can bank it up in your freezer, thaw it out when you're ready to eat it. The alternative, anytime you ask a diet question, you should say, compared to what? And so, can you be healthy on beef, butter, bacon, and eggs? Yes, but compared to what? The standard American junk diet? 100 times yes. The cheapest meat at the supermarket is going to be better for you than the most expensive box of cereal on the cereal aisle. The cheapest bologna or hot dogs are going to be more nutritious and less inflammatory than the most expensive loaf of bread in Whole Foods market. Yes.
And Dr. Berry, how do you see the role of technology, CGMs, blood testing, genetic testing, in supporting the proper human diet?
I think for many people, especially initially when they're very metabolically sick, not only does it give them good feedback, but it also gives their doctor feedback. Oh, your A1C is coming down. Oh, your visceral fat's coming down. I think for many people, they need that feedback. Many people don't. They're like, I don't care about any of that. I just want my belt I want to keep going up notches on my belt, and I want my pants to keep getting looser and looser, because those are also markers of improving metabolic health, and they're free. You can also buy a tailor's tape and do a waist to height ratio. And your goal is to get that less than 0.5. I've got a YouTube video about how to do that if anybody's confused. But you can use those cheap markers of metabolic health, or you can do the full body MRI, the DEXA scans, the lab work every 3 months. I think some people who have multiple metabolic diseases, they need to do that lab work and maybe that imaging, at least initially. But for many people, as they get healthier and healthier, I don't think that they still need to spend all that money on all that testing. I think once you've got it figured out, you can just eat your meat and then go outside and play and live your life.
And looking ahead, what's your vision for the future of healthcare if more people adopt the proper human diet?
I look for especially primary care doctors to be talking more about diet. I'm looking for an explosion in certified health coaches who can work with a doctor, with a group of patients, or work individually with each patient. I think that as the principles of a proper human diet continue to exponentially expand into all corners of the world, doctors are going to have health coaches. I think that people are also, they're, like I said at the very beginning, some of us are like mountain lions. We don't need help. We don't need support. You tell me what to do. Give me a copy of the Proper Human Diet Guidebook, and then I'll go back on my mountaintop. I'll do it myself. I don't need any help. And I think that's a fine strategy for some people, but other people need to see their doctor because they're currently on multiple medications. They're going to have questions about their diet. The doctor doesn't have time to answer all those diet questions 30 times a day. So they're going to have to, at some point, start to employ health coaches. I think that there's going to be more and more people, just regular folks, trucks drivers, cosmetologists, people who work at supermarkets. They're going to transform their own health, Dr. Kiltz, by eating a proper human diet. And they're going to start an Instagram account or a YouTube channel or a Facebook page. And they're just going to start teaching their friends and neighbors how to do this. And I think that is completely appropriate and completely healthy, natural, and normal. Because think about it. Who used to teach the next generation how to eat? It used to be the mothers and the grandmothers and the aunts and the uncles. That's who taught. Nobody had a PhD in nutrition. Nobody had a medical degree. You just knew what to eat before humans were intelligently ignorant. Everybody knew what you should eat and what you shouldn't eat. If you were going to eat plants, then you either roasted the plants, you soaked them, you cooked them to death, or you fermented them before you ate the plants, right? Everybody's forgot that knowledge. So as one by one, as we're retaught and we remember, oh yeah, we're going to start to teach our friends and family. And I think those are the trends you're going to see going forward in the future.
Well, Dr. Berry, this has really been a powerful, eye-opening conversation. Always enjoy speaking with you, by the way, every single time. And your insights of the proper human diet and helping all of us cut through so much confusion that we all have been sharing for years and finally figuring this out. Dr. Berry's work, from his book, Lies My Doctor Told Me, and the book on Common Sense Labs. Tell us just quickly, briefly, where we can find you. What are the things people should invest their time, energy, and a small amount of money for their health and wellness?
Invest all of your money, all of your willpower, all of your stamina into fixing your diet. That's going to solve 80% of your health problems. 10% are going to be solved by slowly but surely increasing your exercise, your activity. 80% solution is fix your food and keep it fixed. That's where you need to spend most of your time, effort, and money. I've got 1,900 videos that you can watch for free on my YouTube channel. Okay, I've got thousands of posts on my Facebook page, on my Instagram page, on my Twitter feed, even on TikTok. I'm on TikTok, just like Dr. Kiltz. trying to do all the TikTok dances. No, I'm not. I'm just talking about nutrition. But that's where you can find me, and you can get all that information for free. Then the next step is to say, okay, I now understand the principles of a proper human diet. I'm going to apply them to my life, and I'm going to stick to them, and I'm going to spend my money on real food for human beings, and I'm going to stop wasting money on supplements, pharmaceuticals, and other junk that's very faddish and very popular, but it might give me a 1% solution. I'm going to spend all my time, money, and energy on the 80% solution, which is fix the food and keep it fixed.
A simple story for a simple problem that we in modern medicine have made it so complex. So thank you, Dr. Ken Berry. My best to you and always the family. Always inspired by what you have to share. So thanks everyone for joining us on Carnivore Conversations.